Dear YouTubers, welcome to another Real Turkey channel show. This is your loving host Atilla Yeşilada sending his best from Istanbul, Turkey, which is very sunny today. Today I'm going to talk about the economic crises of Turkey. I'm laughing because I look at my video archive and 90% of it is about predictions of imminent crises in Turkish economy. And I'm sure, any fair person would ask me, what the hell is this crisis? I mean, you have been talking about an economic crisis for the last 3 years. And Turkish economy is still standing up. Is that so? Is the Turkish economy really standing up? Well, if you read the foreign commentators or investment banking analyses, the most frequent word you would hear about the Turkish economy is resilient. Despite all this pain and grief and suffering, it still stands up. It still goes on. Well, that's a very narrow-sighted view because foreign investors and foreign commentators, economists focus on the traditional definition of a crisis, which is either bank failures, a balance of payments crisis, or what the common people call a currency shock, that's a sudden devaluation of the currency, or the government saying, I'm sorry, I can't pay off my debt, so, there, take me to the court. But what do the Turkish people think? How do they view their economy? Do they see any way out from this tunnel? And what is the light at the end of the tunnel? Is it sunlight or is it the proverbial locomotive coming at all of its speed towards the Turkish economy? Now, I propose to prove my thesis that as far as the people of this fine nation go, Turkish economy is in a deep crisis. To the extent possible, I have reproduced English language text and charts, but some of them are unfortunately in Turkish. You'll have to take my word for it. Okay, let me first show you, just a second, how I intend to prove my thesis that Turkish economy is in crisis. I wish I could use music, but I really can't pay the intellectual property rights, so I may whistle, but that's going to turn off the audience. Well, I'm going to look at unemployment, poverty, the share of bad loans in the banking system, and then surveys. What do Turks think? I mean, how do they feel about themselves, their financial well-being, their job prospects, etc., etc.? Let me keep this cover on the screen for about 10 seconds so everybody can read it and see the method I'm going to go about to prove my thesis. I didn't include inflation here, which is 17%. If you live in the United States or in any of the European countries, I'm sure you know even 3% inflation spooks the central bank and investors and, of course, the common people on the street who start grumbling loudly. We have 17% and it's going to get worse and no one seems to care. So I'm just going to skip that. But unemployment is very important because, life is a one-way street. If you're unemployed today, there is no way you can make it up. And do you know what the unemployment rate is in Turkey? Well, let me show you this chart, which was reproduced from Turkstat data by our fine Turkey data monitor team. Look at the very last row, labor underutilization rate. That corresponds to American Labor Department's broad unemployment ratio. That was last year when the first epidemic-related restrictions were imposed. That was 23.3%. as of March 2021, it rose to 25.8%. Currently, one out of every employable person is not working in Turkey. Now, unemployment is also high in the United States and in most developed markets simply because restrictions continue, lockdowns continue. But there's a difference. In many of these countries, people who are forced into unemployment receive a decent welfare package. This is not the case in Turkey. Do you know what an average worker, blue collar or white collar, doesn't matter, receives from the government if he or she is forced into mandatory unemployment because her company is closed, her stall is closed, her grocery store is closed? 1,000 liras. That's roughly $125. So broad-based unemployment is a severe social problem in Turkey. And don't tell me a society where 1 out of 4 eligible persons can't get work or is forbidden to work because of the COVID-19 epidemic can be a happy society. There's another problem. The government has been so miserly, so stingy about handing out welfare payments that Turkish poverty is rising very rapidly. And don't take my word for it. Let me just find the graphic here. Actually, it's a table. This is from April 2021 World Bank report. That's a simulation analysis, but Turkstat finds similar results that in 2020 only, Turkey's poverty rate rose by 2.1%. That is, 1.6 million people suddenly became poor. Currently, according to Turkstat, 21% of households in Turkey are qualified as poor. That is, receiving as less than 60% of the median Turkish income. And the median Turkish income is $7,500 per annum. Convert this into purchasing power parity, you get $20,000 a year, and 60% of that is something like $12,000. So 1 out of every 5 families, and the average family size is 3.3, are forced to live with an income of less than $1,000 a month. That's not absolute poverty. They can still afford some food and shelter, but don't tell me these people are happy. Don't tell me these people don't think the economy is in crisis. Another thing, okay, we're not in a crisis, but for some reason, Turkish lira keeps dropping like a Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, by the way, they rock. This is a chart of the dollar versus the Turkish lira over time. If you look at it, you would hardly see that the Turkish economy is not in crisis. I mean, look at this graph. It's almost exponential. Typically, you would get the picture of a roller coaster if you look at the exchange rate of a country versus the American dollar. It goes up and down. Perhaps there is a trend. Over time, it weakens or strengthens slightly one way or other. But this currency just keeps going down. That is, the dollar keeps getting stronger as time passes. And, Turkey carries huge amount of foreign debt. Since inflation is so high, people measure their true income and wealth in terms of American dollars. So how we're not in crisis, I fail to understand that. Let me show you one more thing that's very interesting. I told you at the beginning that one definition of a crisis is bank insolvencies or bank failures. Of course, Turkey doesn't have any bank failures, and no way am I implying that any Turkish bank is close to insolvency, but they're clearly in a bad shape. How do I know? Well, let me show you this chart from Fitch report. I'm sorry, I don't remember the date of the report, but if anyone sends a comment, I'll gladly provide the link. This is Turkish banking sector asset quality. Look at the blue and red columns. The blue are the official bad loans, which are dead. And the red column is what they call stage 2 or severely impaired loans. These are not dead, but they're comatose. They are on, respirators. And they are very unlikely to return to life simply because Turkish economy is not growing. I mean, it's not my personal viewpoint. It's going to grow 6% this year, according to IMF and world forecasts. I'm making up the number, but it's something 5 or 6% because of the base effect. But IMF's long-term forecast for Turkish economy is 3.5%. The 5-year average prior to the COVID epidemic was 5%. So let me pose this question. If the Turkish private sector has accumulated so many impaired loans during a period where real GDP was growing at a 5% per annum clip, how are they going to pay it off when the growth per annum drops to 3.5%? So, clearly, Turkish banks are not going to go down, are not going to go bankrupt, but their capital adequacy ratios are much lower than stated in their regulatory statements, and they'll need bailouts. But more importantly, let's don't focus on banks because I want to focus on the private sector. Private sector can't pay its loans. That's the huge question here. That means it's not making any profits. And this data is from end 2020. In the first 5 months of the year, there was hardly any growth. We estimate that quarter on quarter, first quarter growth would be something like 0.7, 0.8%. And the second quarter, it's not going to get better. So this bad loans ratio will probably have increased. Now let's look at what the people think. And here, these are unfortunately in Turkish. But again, if you send me a comment question, I'll gladly link the article to you. This is by Istanbul Economic Research, fine people, independent and impartial, in the sense that they really have no track with politics. They are simply trying to do their job. The question is, how do you think the economy will fare in the next 12 months? Let's look at the red snake-like crawling line. It says 55. Those are the respondents who answered to the question as bad or worse. Only 22% think it's going to get better or much better. Now, I should have added another chart here, which I forgot, which asks the question, how do you think the economy is doing right now? And if I remember correctly, I hope I'm not misquoting Istanbul Economic Research, something like 70% of the people said, oh, it sucks, it's really bad. So you have maybe, 2/3 or 3/4 of the respondents, not only to Istanbul Economic Research Survey, but to a broad range of surveys across the board, who say, oh man, this economy is really, really bad. I mean, I tell you how bad it is. And then you ask the second question, okay, well, sorry to hear that. How do you think it's going to do in the next 12 months? And more than half of it say, oh boy, this is nothing. Tomorrow is going to be even worse. Now, you tell me, is this a crisis or not? I mean, can you still tell me that this is a resilient economy when people are feeling bad and they believe, a majority believes that they're going to feel even worse the next year? I'm sorry, this is no laughing matter, you'll probably say, but, I'm just done crying, boys and girls. This is another one. This is very direct. It doesn't beat around the bush. This is a Russia survey agency, center-left, and not necessarily pro-government, I admit that. And the question is very straightforward. Do you think the Turkish economy is in a crisis? Let's look at the yellow column. It says 88%. This is the ratio of respondents said, hell yes, Turkish economy is in crisis. So I think this is the most direct proof that Turkish economy is indeed in crisis. I mean, how much more can I say? I'm sorry. Let me just find my own picture here. Look, I mean, I'm not, criticizing foreign investors or foreign commentators. Clearly, they have a lot of countries to cover, and there's a standard method of analyzing countries. By the standard definitions, Turkey is not in a crisis. That's fair. But as far as the misery of the common people, the common Aisha on the street goes, it's very deep. We're talking about deep poverty. We're talking about massive unemployment. And let me tell you, it's not going to get better. Simply because, look at India and Brazil. They have not been able to sort out their COVID-19 crises. Neither have we. Turkey just endured a 17-day lockdown, during which cases, that's daily new patients, declined from 60,000 to 10,000, roughly. Congratulations to our health ministry and to our brave medical professionals who really worked hard. Yesterday, which is 18th of May, daily cases jumped to 12,000 again. I also look at the ratio of positive tests to number of tests, and it has increased from 5% to 6%, which is extremely high. Worse, we have run out of vaccines. And even though the health ministry promises new purchases, none is being delivered. We really don't know. Currently, out of a population of roughly 84 million, 10 million people are fully vaccinated and 14 million fully vaccinated, 10 million have received their first doses. The rest, hopefully sometime around the late summer, there would be enough vaccines for everyone to go. But there is a deeper problem here. If you read about the long-term economic effects of COVID-19, you have probably heard that there's something called scarring. That is, I'm certain that humanity will defeat this nasty disease. Maybe by the end of this year, maybe sometime next year. But it will be too late for certain professions, mostly in services. It will be too late for uneducated, unskilled workers. It may be too late for some women who have to take care of their very young children. And Turkey is just full of this kind of people. We're missing a whole technological revolution. That's digitalization, artificial intelligence, robots, etc. Because our kids haven't really gone to school for the last 2 years. And 1/4 of the population has been unemployed for over a year, which means they are losing whatever skills they have. There hasn't really been any kind of new private investment into these new technologies. And in the meantime, like all other emerging markets, our government has accumulated new debt, which it will have to pay back once the global conditions normalize. So there is clearly a governance crisis at work here. Turkey is not going to improve. This is an existential crisis which requires new thinking, new government, new policies, and definitely external help. Okay, well, that's enough bad news for one day. If you like this video, please share it and keep watching us. We'll definitely shoot more videos and put it on our website. This is Atilla Yeşilada saying goodbye from Istanbul. Stay healthy. These new Indian variants are nastier than the others. Goodbye now. Evet.